The opinions and statements made by the guests of the Success in Practice podcast are their own, and I do not endorse or accept responsibility for their positions. Any information given by myself or the guests is educational in intention and not to be taken as medical advice. If you choose to act on the content involved in the podcast, you do so at your own risk. Today I'm joined by Andrea Robertson. Andrea is currently an osteopathic nomad. She has successfully moved her career mostly to the online space, helping people improve their health and businesses. She's still a registered practicing osteopath, naturopath, nutritionist, and business coach. She has been practicing since 2000 after graduating from Victoria University's Osteopathy program. Andrea sold her clinic that she started in 2008, 2 years ago, and has moved to the online space. She now mostly runs online nutrition, health programs, as well as business coaching programs for health professionals. A former professional dancer, she's also a ballet instructor and teaches that online also. She's a mountain of knowledge when it comes to nutrition and naturopathy and incorporates that in her osteopathic practice. Andrea, thanks for being on the podcast. Finally, welcome.
Thanks, Sammy. It's so good to be here.
I know it's late, so I appreciate your time, and hopefully we can give the listeners lots of value.
And I have to tell everyone who's listening that when Sammy asked me to do this, he said it's 8:30 at night. I'm like, I don't know how good I'm going to be in the nighttime. We'll see.
Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be a superstar, I'm sure. Look, I think the best value we can give people today is to really explore your progression from a face-to-face clinician to the online space. You've really kind of blazed the trail or blazed the way there, not just consulting online only, but I guess also running programs and maybe using that to scale your business as well. So
yeah, totally.
I'd also like to discuss some of the ways that you're helping women with their health, as well as other health professionals with expanding their businesses online. We'll discuss some osteopathy and some of your insights into building and running a practice, because you have had a wealth of experience in that field, and there's been some ups and downs. So I'm sure we can all learn from that experience. And finally, I want to get your thoughts on the requirement for success in osteopathy and in business. You've been around successful practitioners. You are and you've been a successful practitioner in your career, and now you coach successful practitioners move their businesses to the online space. So you'd have a pretty good insight onto what it takes to get that success. Andrea, are you happy with that? Is there anything that you want to particularly discuss that I've missed out on, or that you feel like you want to share with the public?
No, sounds good to me, Sammy. We'll see where we go with our conversation.
Right. Okay, so look, we'll get to the business side of things, but first things first. Tell us about you growing up, Andrea. How did that help you achieve the things that you've been able to do? Give us some background as to where you grew up, what the circumstances were like, and how you think some of those lessons helped you kind of get through each stage of your career.
Okay, so I'm a farm girl. I grew up on a farm in country Victoria, and my parents were both, my mum was a teacher, dad was a farmer, so they're both hard workers. And I think definitely my brother and I now have that hard work ethic instilled in us, which sometimes I don't know if it's a help or a hindrance. I think it's a bit of both, but Sammy, you and I know that I talk to my business coaching clients a lot about limiting beliefs. And I think one of my limiting beliefs is hard work equals making money. And that was one of the things I really had in my osteopathy practice, because when I wanted more money, I had to work harder, see more patients, make more money. Like that was kind of, it validated that belief that I had about myself. And I've still got that belief, but at times I now wake up and I see $12,000 has gone into my bank account overnight while I was sleeping. And so it's a very different thing, but I still feel like I have to be working really hard to be doing what I'm doing. So that kind of came from my background of what I did. And I think too, you touched on it before, but I had a career as a professional dancer. And so I was trained in classical ballet from when I was 3 all the way through till 18. And then I went off dancing around the world and well, actually I studied osteo first, then I went off dancing around the world. And just that, that hard work ethic that comes from a dancer, I think has stood me in really good stead with osteo and being a clinic owner, and now, running online businesses.
Yeah, look, I guess the not the debate, but the conversation around hard work is that, hard work should be really something that you do because you want to achieve something, you want to get somewhere. It's not so much about the monetary gains. It's about the goal that you've set for yourself. And I guess the income should be secondary, and I think that's the right way that it should happen, right? Like if you work hard at something you're passionate about, the money will come.
That's right, but I think I work too hard still.
Right.
and I'm learning that I don't have to work that hard to still be able to make money. But that's a little thing that I have to work with, because sometimes I just feel empty space with work that I don't need to be doing, because I think I should be, from that ingrained hard work equals making money.
Do you think though? Do you think you may have raised the bar, and like by raising your bar, that you think that you might not be as working as hard, but you're more comfortable? Would that?
Oh yeah, life's very different. Life is definitely very different now to what it was when I was running the clinic and being very, very busy with all of that. But I think I'm finding it hard. Like, I can make more money now doing way less hours, but I'm still used to it for so long, working so much, that it's hard to be used to having that empty space.
Okay, well, I guess growing up in the country, what made you move to, I guess, well, not move, but what made you take up osteopathy at Victoria University?
Yeah, so I guess as a little dancer, I always had little bits of niggles and aches and pains, and I used to see a local chiropractor in Hamilton. That's where I was. I still don't even know that there's an osteopath there now. There has been on and off, but back then there definitely wasn't an osteopath when I was growing up. So I saw a local chiropractor, and I remember Mum and Dad saying to me, what do you want to do when you want to grow up? I wanted to be a ballerina. And they said, you need to have a backup plan. And I said, well, I'll be a chiropractor. And so I went to, the chiropractor that I was seeing and told him that. And he said to me, no, don't be a chiropractor. I think you should be an osteopath.
Wow. How did that conversation go?
Well, he was one of those old chiropractors that studied both osteopathy and chiropractic. And he had that dual qualification that he could call himself one or the other, but he chose to call himself a chiropractor at the time because he felt it was more well known. This is years ago. He'd probably be in his 80s now, and probably his 80s. And then, but he practiced more like an osteopath, he said. So what he was doing, he felt was more osteopathy than chiropractic. Wow, and now that I know what I know, he was much more of an osteopath. So I didn't know anything about it, and so I applied for osteopathy in my interviews. This is a funny story, Sammy. So, did my year 12 exams, did really well. Went off down to Melbourne for the interviews that we had to have for osteopathy and chiropractic at the time. And I put my preferences as osteopathy, chiro. I think there's one chiro course, and maybe physio or something. Physio, and then OT. And I got a really good score at high school in the mid-90s. And I remember going to the interviews, and I was like little naive country girl. And Paul Orick, he says he doesn't remember this, but I really remember. He said, and why do you, have you he said, have you applied for any other courses? And I said, oh yeah, like chiro and physio. He's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't mind as long as it's something hands-on. I didn't get into osteopathy because I said all the wrong things in the interview. I didn't get into chiropractic because I said all the same wrong things in the interview. And I got my 7th choice, which was OT, and I was totally unimpressed with it. So I did a year of OT, hated it, failed anatomy with 29% because I never went to class. Like, I just hated it. And I practically begged my way into osteopathy the next year because I really, a year in Melbourne, I worked out what I wanted to do. I knew I really wanted to be an osteopath. I pestered Paul Orick to let me in. And I don't know why I did, but he did it in the end because I failed really badly first year OT. I was doing resits and stuff on exams. And he said to me, if I let you into this course, you're never allowed to fail anything. I was like, I won't fail. And I didn't fail anything for the whole 5 years. So,
Well, we'll have to get Paul on the podcast and check that with him.
he does remember I spoke to him about it, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. And he was like, I did not say that to you. And I'm like, yes, you did.
Okay, so given that you completed your studies at Victoria University and then graduated, what were those early years of practice like for you? And what advice could you give to maybe some of the younger practitioners out there to make those early years count, not just to kind of have them kind of go by, but to actually make the most of them? What would be the best advice you could give someone who's starting out and it might be a little bit anxious about their first few years of practice? Hello, everyone. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank everyone for watching and listening to the podcast. If you have received value from this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel on whichever platform that you are listening on. If any of the conversations have resonated with you and you feel that I can help elevate your practice, you can find me at successinpractice.net. That is, the Success in Practice program can be found at successinpractice.net. The Success in Practice program is the signature program that takes a practitioner who may be struggling with retaining patients. They may not be certain about building effective treatment strategies, and they may feel somewhat anxious and doubtful about what they are going to do with a patient. And they are not really accelerating in the real world of private practice. It takes this practitioner and it turns their careers right around to the point where the patients have an effective diagnosis and a real treatment plan that they can take home. Patients are happy to book in multiple sessions with you and they are confident about your abilities. And more importantly, you now have direction and are confident about your own abilities. The program streamlines how you operate as a practitioner. Guys, you should have been taught this at university, but you weren't. You may have been practicing for the last few years thinking there has to be a better way. There has to be a more effective way of engaging with patients and getting them results. Well, there is. And this is what the program delivers. Go to successinpractice.net and check out the options available to you. See where I can help you easily grow your patient list and finally earn the rewarding income that you deserve. For all the information on how you can reach me personally, check out the show notes. Also in the show notes, you'll find a link to the chat transcripts from these podcasts. These are valuable and a wealth of information. I really hope that you're enjoying the podcast. Guys, leave a comment if there's any questions on this episode, and please, don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel. Now, back to the show.
Okay, so I think my kind of story was a little bit different to probably what most people would do. So I worked only for 10 months in Australia when I first graduated, and that was in Ballarat. And I was living in Melbourne and still quite busy with my dance career, and I was sort of dancing 5 days a week, and then I would go to Ballarat, do 2 massive days and see 20 patients each day, stay the night there and come back to Melbourne. So I'd sort of get 40 patients done in a week in 2 days. And we were both so busy at the clinic there, myself and my principal osteopath, that we didn't really get time for any mentoring, and I did a lot of paperwork on my own. So it was as a subcontractor, but I was, quite on my own with that position. And then I went off traveling the world with my dance, and so I was able to take my osteopathy with me wherever I went, of course, and I had instant patience with all the other dancers in the shows that I was in. But I remember having a lot of conversations with my friend Zoe Freshwater, just getting help from her on the phone. Like, we'd spend hours talking, and God, I don't even remember how I talked to her then, because the internet wouldn't have been so handy there. I just remember always being able to speak to her and share stories and share patient experiences. But when I did a couple of years in Paris, and then I went to work in a big show in Spain, and I set up a little clinic with an English trained GP who was working in Spain. He had 2 little rooms, and we had him in one room and me in the other room. And I just kind of muddled my way through. Like, I remember a particular patient with low back pain, and came 1 time, 2 times no change, 3 times no change. I can't remember how many times, but maybe 4 or 5. And then I thought, probably should check his hip flexors. Checked his hip flexors, and they were like little rocks in his where his psoas was. And I released those, and his back pain was gone. And I was like, oh, okay, someone had helped me with that. That would have been good, but it took me like 4 or 5 goes of no change to kind of realize. So a little bit of mentoring along the way would have been quite handy. But in that clinic, it was a lovely experience because working so close with a GP, like we could really work closely with patients. And he couldn't mentor me as an osteopath, but I learned a lot from just kind of being in that proximity with him. And it was a great experience. But I definitely needed help. And the phone calls with Zoe, and that, you know, the phone calls with Zoe made a massive difference because she was in the same boat, but she was getting some really great mentoring at the practice that she was, and so kind of got passed down to me through her. And then it wasn't really until I came back to Australia and I started working with Paul Driscoll in Sydney, and we had a great little team there, Kathleen Feary and Jen Richardson, and the three of us and Paul had a great little thing going on. And I felt like I kind of got the support and the network then that I hadn't had for a long time. But that was about 6 years after I graduated. So I think my learning kind of started then, other than just like muddling through a bit before that.
And so, okay, to expand on that question a little bit, you did have your own practice for a long time, and you had osteopaths working with you as well. And so you must have done a lot of mentoring yourself to younger graduates. And so,
I did.
yeah, compare and contrast that for us in terms of what you found worked best for them. What were the things that they were lacking, and how would you, like, given that experience, then what advice would you give to people? What's the best thing they could do to kind of just fast track their improvement, I guess?
Yeah, it's interesting as a practice owner. Like I felt a lot of the time I was under pressure to see a lot of patients, to keep making money, to keep paying everyone's wages and look after that. So I scheduled in mentoring. All my staff had a group. We had a group session once a week, and everyone got one-on-one time with me once a week as well. But beyond that, I felt like my capacity wasn't there to be able to support and mentor like every patient, or be able to check more than that. And often, one of my colleagues or associates would stop me in the corridor and say, "Oh, can I help with a patient?" Like, "Oh, I'm just running late. Can we talk about it afterwards?" So we had very much had an open door policy though too. Like if someone needed help with a particular technique while the patient was in there, they could come and knock on the door, and we did a lot of that. But there wasn't a lot of time outside of that set mentoring time to sit down and have deeper conversations. So I feel like that's something, as I reflect as a business owner, I would like to change again, but it was tricky at the time to know how to fit it all in. But compared to my experience, I feel like the staff that worked with me definitely had a lot more support than what I had. Like I just kind of did muddle along on my own, and I felt like I didn't really feel like I'd honed in my musculoskeletal skills probably until 6 or 7 years after I graduated, and it could have been done a lot faster.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, moving forward, then you continued to practice, and then I guess given those early years where you said that you kind of muddled along, and then you moved into a practice, I think, with Paul Driscoll, and that really accelerated your improvement. What was different? What did you see that was different about osteopathy, given that experience? Like, tell me what you think is special about osteopathy now that you've seen it, you've been there and done that. What's so special about it? Like, what kind of got you hooked?
It's a good question. You know what I really love about it is it's never boring. However, in the first 5 years, I remember thinking, is this all it is? Because I saw neck pain and back pain. I didn't know how to see anything else. Do you know what I mean? Like I couldn't see anything else on the patient.
Right.
It was just they'd come in for neck pain or back pain, and I would treat neck pain and back pain as a very musculoskeletal, straight neck pain, straight back pain thing. And then it was when I moved in Sydney, when I was working there, I had someone down the road that I could refer to if I felt they needed some cranial work, or someone I could refer to down the road if I felt they needed some visceral work. And then I moved to Adelaide and started my clinic there, and I had no one to refer to. So I had to upskill really quickly, and I did a lot of courses and a lot of training with musculoskeletal and visceral and cranial, because I felt like, treating babies, and that had to kind of become that practitioner that could see anyone and everybody, because there wasn't anyone else to refer to at the time. And there's very few osteopaths in Adelaide at the time when I started. And so then it like opened up more, like a normal back pain or a normal, I would have thought was just a boring neck pain or back pain in my first 5 years became something so much more interesting, like ongoing back pain that nobody had responded to, no treatment they'd been to before, might have been coming from like a scar at the front of their stomach when they'd had abdominoplasty, something like that. Yeah. And that's when I got really excited by it. Or back pain was coming from endometriosis, so I could treat that. And then when I lay it in, I remember thinking of, you'd all relate to this, everyone listening, that, you chat away, and it's like the first minute or 2 minutes of the treatment is where all the thinking happens for me. Like, and my patients would want to have a gossip, and I'd be like, no talking for the first minute or two, let me get my head around it, and then I'd be like, all right, I'm ready to gossip now. But then I would just, we'd gossip as we're treating and stuff. But then I thought, I'm wasting all this time that I could be giving really good information while I'm just chatting about, usually boys at that time. That was the topic of conversation when I was in my 30s with all my female patients. They were like, what dates have you been on today, Andrea? But then I started studying naturopathy nutrition, because I thought, all these beautiful patients I'm treating for all this really amazing visceral kind of related stuff, I'd love to be able to talk to them about nutrition and supplements. And so then I felt my practice went next level again, because I was able to actually give quality education and advice while I was treating some of these really interesting conditions. And so I kind of gone off tangent here, Sammy, but I feel like that first 5 years of practice, I think, is really imperative to know that it's more than just neck pain and back pain in osteopathy. Like, if I'd had my eyes opened up to more stuff earlier on, I wouldn't. I never got bored. I always loved it. But I see in the graduates that I had working for me, I see that 5-year kind of phase where a lot of them in that first 5 years think, this is boring, this isn't what I signed up for. I learned all of this information. Now all I treat is neck pain and back pain. Oh, occasionally a foot. Oh, occasionally an elbow. But then it's neck pain, back pain. And so I was like, you just got to hang out, get that musculoskeletal skills honed in early on. But then the doors will open, like it all opens up, and there's so much more amazingness that you'll see in your patients that you can help with. And that's when, straight structural osteopathy, I think, gets, well, what I was doing in my first 5 years anyway would help 80% of my patients, but it was that last little 10 to 20% is what, from the other skills I added in, that I felt then I could help.
Well, I think the common thread there that I'm listening to you, and the common thread that I see is that I think you're making a distinction between the musculoskeletal application and the structural application versus the thinking, right? Like the thinking of osteopathy kind of it permeated through your nutrition, the naturopathy, it permeated through the entire process. So I guess that's probably what you were missing in those first 5 years, is that you were looking at it as a kind of like one-dimensional philosophy, where it's actually multidimensional. And once you start seeing it that way, it's kind of like Neo in the Matrix, when he starts seeing ones and zeros pop up, and you start recognizing patterns, and then certain patterns lead you onto other patterns, and then all of a sudden you're going from the talus to the occiput, and then all the duodenums in between and all that kind of stuff, right? So
totally.
So the thinking process, I think, is the core of it. And the sooner you can get that down pat, the sooner you'll like take off and then open up those horizons like you described. Would that be accurate? Would that kind of
definitely. And I felt like I became a real osteopath. Like,
it becomes inspiring.
And I love it. I still, even though I don't do a lot of it anymore, not compared to what I used to do, but I just love it still. And every time I see a patient, it just feels good, because you can really do the detective work, and you can listen to the body and really feel what's going on, and find weird stuff, like weird stuff, not weird to us, but weird to the patient, about where their particular pain's coming from, or what's going on for them, can make them feel so much better.
Let me fast forward a little bit to 2008. You started your own practice, and you were building that practice. What were some of the challenges that you faced early on, maybe from a business point of view, And then what did you enjoy most about it? You know, starting and building a practice.
I have always been a bit of an entrepreneur. I love the business side of things, and I love learning new things. So it was another whole skill set to learn. And I remember when I started my practice, I got accepted into a program in South Australia run by the government called the South Australian Young Entrepreneurs Scheme. And I remember we were matched with a mentor, and he said to me in the early days, "So how are you keeping records of all your receipts and accounting?" And I was like, in an Excel document. And he was like, "Oh, really? Okay, we're going to change that." So I didn't even know accounting software existed. Like, I just didn't know anything. So my Excel spreadsheet turned into using Maya, then to Zero, and like my knowledge of upskilling and learning is so much greater than it was when I first started the practice. But I think I'm just an eternal learner, and I love that about running a business.
What was
Some of
the
the
hardest?
challenges,
What was the hardest part? Yeah, like in terms of growing that
yeah,
business, was it marketing? Was it sales? What did you really find that was difficult?
it was the hardest part for me in Adelaide was getting staff. That was the
Right.
hardest part. Yeah, the marketing and sales I love. I find that quite natural. Like, I really enjoy building relationships and connections, and we had a very, very busy practice very quickly. But yeah, the hardest piece was getting staff, and
And to
I,
be clear, when you say staff, you mean other osteopaths, or are you talking about reception
yeah,
staff and administration staff? Other
no,
osteopaths, right?
they were easy to find. Other
Yeah,
osteopaths was hard to find. Yeah.
yeah.
And so I
Okay.
started a scholarship program. I don't know if you remember me doing this, Sammy, but I started a scholarship program, can't even remember when, and I would sponsor. This is before the new graduates were doing internships or any of that kind of thing. And I used to sponsor 2 students a year and would fly them to Adelaide and put them up in accommodation for a week, and they'd spend a week in the clinic and would do student, I think the fifth years could do student consults, and the fourth years and third years, I think I had them 3 years, would make me think here, it's a while ago now. They would do observations, and we had a lot of coaching sessions and mentoring sessions, and then if I offered them a job at the end, then they had, an obligation to say yes. Otherwise, we did have, there was a contract and an out clause and all that
Mm.
kind of stuff. But it set me up really well, because then I would get them coming. The new graduates would come to Adelaide for a couple of years, and would have them for a few years before they'd go and spread their wings and usually go back to Victoria. But at least I'd have kind of a constant roll of new grads coming
Yeah,
over.
it's odd because I've spoken to a few other practitioners for this podcast, and they haven't mentioned specifically a scholarship, but they've all mentioned how mentoring kind of, I guess, having them in the clinic, doing some kind of student placement, some kind of internship is probably the way of the future for what we need in the profession. And you've just
Yeah,
touched on it without even me asking you the question. So it's funny how everybody's coming to the same conclusion, except for
yeah.
people that are actually making the decisions about where the courses should go. But that's probably another topic we'll discuss. Okay, so it sounds like you enjoyed really the technical aspects of building a business in terms of the upskilling side of it. The challenges you faced were mainly staff related in terms of hiring and finding other osteopaths. Um, you face many challenges in your practice ownership that really culminated in 2017. There was obviously a bit of turmoil around that time. Tell us about that experience. What did that do to what did that do to you that made you kind of flick a switch in your head to kind of figure out that you had to make a change, you had to change things up? What happened in
Yeah.
2017?
It was a very, very tough time, and I still talk about it even with my business coaches now. I say the 2017 thing, like it's become a thing, and I've had to do a lot of soul searching and things, because I think it really took its toll on me, that particular experience. But I can't even still reflect on how it ended up in such a bad place. But I think so in summary, what happened is I had 9 staff resignations in 12 days, both admin staff. I had a fitness studio joined onto the clinic, so some of those staff members, and also I think 4 or 5 of the osteopaths. At the moment, I think at the time we had about 12 osteopaths, and it was really hard because I had all these patients and no one to treat them.
Was it just was it
treat them.
serendipity that made that happen? Was it kind of like serendipity that it all culminated, or was there accentuating reasons behind that, or a bit of both?
No, I think oh God, okay, this is my interpretation of what happened. So I was part of a franchise with my bar studio. The American owners of the franchise had done a lot of stuff and had the franchise in Australia was falling apart. And so I left the franchise and I had 2 studios that I left. They had me on a non-compete period. So I had to essentially shut the studios for 3 months, or I just ran them and offered free classes. But because of that change, even though I knew my clinic was safe from that part of the business, I think rumors went around that I was going bankrupt and my businesses were failing.
Right.
And so a lot of people jumped ship, whereas my clinic was ticking along beautifully. The bar studio was ticking along beautifully, but I didn't want to be part of this new structure that the American franchise had sold to an Australian company. It was turning into like a very big corporate kind of thing that I didn't want to be a part of. So I think that's where it happened. It was also a very stressful time for me. And so I don't think I had as much capacity to be there for my staff when they needed one-on-one nurturing and care. I just didn't have the capacity for that. So I think that they didn't feel listened to or heard perhaps as much as they needed. So it wasn't anyone's fault. I think it was just an accumulation of the situation, rumors, because there's a lot of rumors going on that I was folding and going bankrupt, which I wasn't. But after they left, I nearly went bankrupt because
so the
I
clinic
didn't have
was
anyone
busy.
to see the patients.
Osteopathically speaking, the clinic was busy.
Yeah, pumping patients through, $1 million turnover. Like, it was huge. So all I knew what to do to pull myself out of this really tough time was to see more patients so that I could pay all the entitlements of the staff that had left. I had long service leave and sick pay and, all of that stuff to pay out. Not sick pay, holiday pay. Had all of that stuff to pay out. And patients wanting to be seen, but when you don't have practitioners to see the patients, you don't get the money in. And so I just was working 7 days a week with patients, literally, and trying to run the whole place and keep it going. And I got through it. But for 2 years, I didn't go to the hairdresser. I sold my really nice car and drove a $500 car for it 2 years. Literally, I'm surprised it got me from A to B. And made some other sacrifices, but got myself out of it. And but I remember at the time it was so stressful that I thought, if this wasn't my business, I would leave, because I just wasn't liking it at all, and I fell out of love with the whole thing. And so I at one point thought, I can't leave, so I need to change my mindset around this. So I started going to a mindset coach who was also a hypnotherapist and an NLP coach, and I booked in for 10 sessions with him. And I think on the 7th session, I had this epiphany and thought, I need to be bigger than my hourly rate. Like, I don't want to be in this situation again where the only way I can make money is by on the hour or on the half hour, just making money for that hourly rate. But that was the thing that's in my head. I need to be bigger than my hourly rate. And so that's when I first went into the online space. And that was, 2017 is when I first started my first online business. And that was doing teaching people how to become amazing bar instructors, because that was the fitness part of my business, was 2 bar studios with all my dance background. I loved it and found it very easy. And at that point, I'd left that franchise. I'd rebranded, built my own brand, which then turned into a YouTube channel, which has nearly 50,000 subscribers now. And I make revenue from people watching my YouTube videos. Sometimes I don't even film a video for months and I still get revenue from YouTube. And so even that, like now, that is bigger than being an hourly rate, because I film a bar class once and people watch it and YouTube pays me. And it's lovely.
Great.
But it was a really tough time, but it taught me that I have a lot of strength and I have a lot of resilience. So I learned that about myself as well. But it opened up the door of the online space, Sammy. And so that's been I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a minute. But
that's my next question. So you basically just answered how you got started in the online space. You started with the bar. How did that progress? Then how did you get into? Did you move more into nutrition and health kind of coaching before you moved to the business coaching side of things? Is that how it moved along?
Yeah. So first of all, I started with a bar app. So I made a bar branded app, and we had online classes. So I was filming 2 or 3 classes a week and really enjoying that, and a bar teacher training program. So that was the 2 aspects I did. And I remember it's completely self-taught. Like I learned everything off YouTube videos, like how to blah 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 off YouTube, how to blah blah. Did everything self-taught, video editing and filming and lighting, and just self-taught myself everything. And the bar teacher training program went really well. The app went really well, and I made my first $100,000 in the first 18 months from the online space, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then along the way, I'd also written a recipe book before that. And I had this idea, like I really want to turn my recipe book and the ideas in that into an online program. And so one day I was randomly in a Kajabi is the course hosting software that I use and you use. And I was in a Kajabi users group forum on Facebook, and I saw somebody post about this girl, Nicole, saying she's a health and fitness business coach. And I was like, oh, I need her. So I just clicked and bought her program. So $12,000 I spent on her program. And I remember, again, at the time, I didn't have a huge amount of money, but it was much better than it was in 2017. And I got a tax return for $12,000. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's the universe telling me we can spend that money on this program. And it was amazing. 3 months later, so I launched my nutrition mindset movement program for women over 35 around weight loss and just living a healthier life. And I launched that with a $76,000 launch. And I was like, what on earth is this?
Wow.
Like, this is amazing. How does this even work like this?
Well, that sounds like a lot of hard work, Andrea. You know, I'm going back to what you said earlier about hard work, and I'm starting not to believe you now. But anyway, keep going.
Well, no, it was hard work, but I was really determined, Sammy, because I think I'd had such that hard time in 2017 that I didn't ever want to be back in that place financially again. And so I was still working full time at the clinic. I was running the program. I would just, work on that in the mornings, I think, and then usually one day on a weekend I'd work on that. And I worked pretty hard on it for about 4 months till it was all up and running. And then
you were passionate about it, so it kind of didn't feel like hard work.
No, it doesn't feel like hard work at all. Like it didn't feel like work because I loved it. Really loved it. At the time I had
so $76,000. Let's get, yeah.
No, I have to tell you this little story. At the time I had this boyfriend who was definitely someone I shouldn't have been with, who was a video gamer. So he just wanted to be like gaming all night. So I was like, oh, that's okay. I'll go and build my program while he's gaming.
Well, I guess both of you are using tech just for different purposes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so for launch $76,000, and you went, what the hell? What have I been doing for the last 10 years of my life? Then did things just explode for you? Did you double down on what you already were doing? Where did you go from there?
Well, yeah, no, I just kept doing that. Program was amazing, like super successful. I'm still running that same program now, and it's still going along really well.
And are you still using the same coach that you paid the $12,000 to? Is that somebody who's still?
I did. I was using her for 2 years until just this February. I felt like I kind of outgrown the conversations that we were having in that coaching space. So I'm working with a coach now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I guess you're helping. You said that you had the movement mindset and the health program for women. And when did you start the helping osteopaths and I guess other health practitioners specifically around taking their skill set online from a business point of view? When did that start for you, and how's that been going?
Yeah, amazing. Well, that was about this time 2 years ago. I decided to build out a business coaching program, mostly because I had other practitioners who were watching what I was doing and saying, what are you doing? How are you doing that? I want to know how you're doing what you're doing. So I did some more study. I became a certified business coach and built out a program at the same time I was doing that study to help health practitioners and coaches take their expertise into the online space, which is how you and I properly met.
Yes.
Because I know you're hanging out with me in that space, learning all about all things taking businesses online. And so that's been great. I really love having conversations with practitioners. It's very different conversations to what I have with my clients in the nutrition program. And I really love working with you and the others in the program, just because you're all inspiring and you just get in and get stuff done, and you're all super intelligent. Like, it's a really lovely space to be in. So that's been, I've had to change and work the program a little bit. I initially started off with a 4-month program. I felt not everyone was getting it done in that time. So then I sort of chopped it into 2 halves, and we made each program 4 months. And I think we've got the format right, but the information all the way through is, I'm really pleased with it. And we do coaching twice a week and have lots of great conversations.
Are you making a better income now than what you did as a practice owner? Is that, and you've obviously mentioned you're not working as stressfully, let's call it that. You're not as under as much stress. So I guess they're all wins. They're all win-wins.
Yeah.
And the whole way through, you've always mentioned that even as a young osteopath, you kind of you needed mentoring, and then when you moved to Sydney, you had that mentoring, and then when you started your online space, you had a coach, and now even though you left that coach only recently, you've gone on with another coach. So obviously, you feel that having somebody who's been there and done that is really vital and pivotal to your particular success. Do you think that's something that is across the board, or is it just, is it something just for the online space, or is it something that can be applied to osteopathy as well? Hello everyone, just a quick break to give you some information on where to best find me. The first place is the private Facebook group called the Successful Practitioner Pathway. I've set up this private group as a place where practitioners can go and get tips and advice on how to best accelerate their practice and improve their clinical practice skills. The second place to find me is at successinpractice.net. That is where the Success in Practice signature program is housed. You can find more information about me and how I can best help you achieve success in your practice. So the 2 best places, the private Facebook group, the Successful Practitioner Pathway, and successinpractice.net. I will link to both those places in the show notes. So for more information, please see the show notes. Now, enjoy, and back to the show.
Yeah, applied to everything, Sammy. I think all of us need mentors and a community. Like, the 2 things really help. Just having great conversations with other people who are going through the same stuff as you, but also having a mentor to be able to guide and, make the mistakes for you, so you don't have to make them, and teach you, just fast track everything.
Yeah, it does.
It took me with the bar program, it took me 1.5 years to make $100,000 self-taught. And when I did it with a coach, I just followed exactly what she said. There's the $76,000 in 3 months. So it's completely different. Definitely
I guess
applicable.
you see the investment initially, but then once you've gone past that and you've made the money, you kind of forget about the initial investment, whatever it is, 12,000, 5,000, 10,000 to put in. And it just becomes something that you're happy that you've invested because you see the returns.
Totally.
Asking you a question about the online space, what are some of the big misconceptions that you have had to address, especially, I guess, dealing with people like myself, other health practitioners? What are the misconceptions that you've had to address to healthcare practitioners and the online world in terms of what they think the online world will be like?
Okay. I think a lot of the conversations I've had with health practitioners is a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them think there's too many people already doing this. So they think there's no space for them. But having a really good signature coaching program in the online space, we can charge, decent amount of money for it. And you don't need that many patients, clients, whatever, to be able to make decent money. So there is definitely, I come from an abundance mindset. There's definitely enough people in the world for all of us, no matter how tiny our niche is. So that's one little thing that I've seen come in. A lot of people think they don't have tech skills, so they can't do it because I've never done this. I don't have tech. And Sammy, we've got another Sammy doing the program at the moment too. And when she started, she's a naturopath and yoga teacher. And when she started the program, she's like, I don't know how to do tech skills. And she was even writing her patient notes up by hand. So I've been helping her set up a Clinico account. All of that kind of stuff comes into it. And she's now got a intake form that's an editable PDF, and it's all, now she's really getting very tech savvy. And I remember another one of our clients in the business coaching space was in tears. This is before you joined me, Sammy. She was in tears on about week 5 because she just couldn't get her head around all the tech stuff. And she had a $33,000 launch, and she's just killing it. I see her writing her emails and doing all of her tech stuff now, and she's just going so well. So that's from someone who said they didn't have any tech skills, and now she's just, onwards and upwards. And then there's one more thing that everyone says. What is it? The other kind of thing is like, I'm no good on camera. I can't do this stuff on camera. That's the other thing that people worry about. But it's just about making a decision and saying, this is what I want for myself or my life, and I want to help people, and this is the way I can do it, and then just throwing yourself in head first.
Yeah, look, I think if the message is honest and authentic, it's amazing how people don't care as much as you think they care about how you look online.
100%.
Now, if someone was thinking about taking their skill set online, what's some of the advice that you can give them to be able to succeed there? Like, what's the one thing that they could do straight away that will just fast track their improvement? And we've mentioned mentoring. But what's the thing that they could do to kind of really help them succeed in that space?
In the online space, it's very different to clinic, right? So think about in clinic, we can treat anyone and everyone who comes in the door. We're just in, word of mouth's huge in our local area where we are. And so you just do a good job, and then you can kind of treat anyone and help anyone that comes in. Whereas in the online space, you've got to stand out amongst the noise, and you need to really be able to connect to the people and stop them scrolling past. Like, again, in the online space, a lot of your clients will come from word of mouth. So it's nice, to have a sort of starting point. And my starting point was my patient base from the clinic and the fitness studios. That's really where it started. But you've got to work out what your niche or your kind of specialty, even though we can't use that word in osteopathy, but what your speciality might be, because you can't be everything to everyone in the online space like we can be in the clinic. So you've got to think, all right, I'm just going to create a space that's going to help with this particular problem or help this particular group with something, and then really start to, it's the first step we do in the program, isn't it? Send out a survey and start to see what those patients say to themselves about what problem they have, and then making sure you have the solution to solve that particular problem.
Yeah, you need to be outcomes focused. I think people are really looking for an outcome, and whereas you have the process, and if you focus on the outcome and what you can deliver and see what problem that solves, then that's your little target market there.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this final question for the podcast. We've talked about your career as a dancer. We've talked about your time as a student, as an early osteopath, as a more experienced osteopath, growing your business, and then moving on to the online space and growing that, and kind of doing very well there. What have been the 3 main ingredients to your success at each point in your career? Like, are there commonalities, whether you're in traditional practice versus the online adventure? Are there common traits of people who really kind of do well in their endeavors that you found?
For other people, I'm not sure, but for me, Sammy, it's definitely been, I'm not afraid to take risks. Definitely, I'm quite fine taking risks, and I've done quite a lot of that. I make decisions quickly. I think that's stood me in really good stead for success, both in running the clinic and in my online space. Like, there's a decision I needed to make, I would just do it without overthinking things. What's the third one? And I just back myself, like I believe in myself. And I actually believe that I'm going to be successful no matter what I do.
Yeah. Well, that automatically just moves all the barriers out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andrea, I want to thank you for your time tonight, for taking the time and discussing this. I am going to surprise you though, because I do have some more questions for you that have come up because of this podcast, and I want to specifically talk to you about dancers. I've got a couple of questions on dancers. I need to get your input for the
Okay.
Success in Practice program students. So that'll be exclusively available to them. So we'll say thank you to Andrea for the people listening to the podcast here. Andrea, before I say goodbye, where can people reach you?
Oh, okay. You can follow me on Instagram. I've got 2 places. My business coaching is at Dr. Andrea Robertson. And if you're interested in following the nutrition side of things, is Andrea Robertson health. And then you can just find me on Facebook and add me as a friend. I like being friends with everyone. That's just Andrea Robertson.
Lovely.
Or you can look at my website, which is andrearobertson.health. That's it.
That's easy.
No
andrearobertson.health. Yeah. Okay. Andrea, thank you. For everyone listening to the podcast, thanks for joining us. And I'll continue this conversation on the other side with Andrea. Andrea, thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam.